Hi guys, welcome back to another video. I have a fun one for you today. It's all about simulation theory. I didn't really know much about it, so I went looking for information about it and was reading different things and talking to ChatGPT about it. And I feel like I've come up with a pretty good little deep dive about it now, especially if you're like me and you just don't know anything about it, or maybe you have a rough idea. But yeah, I've kind of collected different bits of information I'm going to read to you just off my computer here. It's kind of loosely based off the idea that we are living in a computer program generated world, I guess similar to the Matrix in a way. Yeah, I don't know if that's true or not, but I do have I have had an experience with virtual reality, playing games with my friends. Went to one of those proper virtual reality places and they hook you up with all the gear. It felt really weird at first. I didn't think I could go through with it. Felt a bit claustrophobic, and then we get used to it. But at one point the world started to turn like that, and it actually made me fall over. Yeah. It felt very real. And the graphics were not even that lifelike, but it still caused my body to fall over. Yeah. So this could all be a little bit ridiculous, but it's still fun to speculate, you know. Especially because this idea of simulation theory, it's very specific to this set of beliefs that I'm going to read to you, but I feel that it delves a little bit into spirituality and spiritual beliefs as well, which I'll touch on a little bit at the end as well. So I am going to start with, guys, I want to read to you from the Wikipedia article just a little bit about simulation theory. Okay, so what is simulation theory? The simulation hypothesis proposes that what one experiences as the real world is actually a simulated reality, such as a computer simulation in which humans are constructs. There has been much debate over this topic in the philosophical discourse and regarding practical applications in computing. In 2003, philosopher Nick Bostrom proposed the simulation argument, which suggests that if a civilization becomes capable of creating conscious simulations, it could generate so many simulated beings that a randomly chosen conscious entity would almost certainly be in a simulation. This argument presents a trilemma. 1. Either such simulations are not created because of technological limitations or self-destruction. 2. Advanced civilizations choose not to create them. Or 3. If advanced civilizations do create them, the number of simulations would far exceed base reality, and we would therefore almost certainly be living in one. This assumes that consciousness is not uniquely tied to biological brains, but can arise from any system that implements the right computational structures and processes. The hypothesis is preceded by many earlier versions, and variations on the idea have also been featured. The The hypothesis is preceded by many earlier versions, and variations on the idea have also been featured in science fiction, appearing as a central plot device in many stories and films, such as Simulacron 3 and The Matrix. Let's read about the origins. Human history is full of thinkers who observed the difference between how things seem and how they might actually be, with dreams, illusions, and hallucinations providing poetic and philosophical metaphors. For example, the butterfly dream of Zhuangzi, sorry guys, from ancient China, or the Indian philosophy of Maya, or in ancient Greek philosophy, when looks like Anaxarchus and Monimus likened existing things to a scene painting and supposed them to resemble the impressions experienced in sleep or madness. I haven't heard that one before. Aztec philosophical texts theorized that the world was a painting or book written by the Teotl, a common theme in the spiritual philosophy of the religious movements, collectively referred to by scholars as Gnosticism, was the belief that reality as we experience it is the creation of a lesser, possibly malevolent deity from which humanity should seek to escape. In the Western philosophical tradition, Plato's allegory of the cave analogized human beings to chained prisoners unable to see reality. René Descartes' evil demon philosophically formalized these epistemic doubts, to be followed by a large literature with subsequent variations like Brain in a Vat. In 1969, Konrad Zuse published his book Calculating Space on Automata Theory, in which he proposed the idea that the universe was fundamentally computational, a concept which became known as digital physics. Later, roboticist Hans Moravec explored related themes through the lens of artificial intelligence, discussing concepts like mind uploading and speculating that our current reality might itself be a computer simulation created by future intelligences. Yeah, so it's been around for a while. It's basically what they're saying. So let's look at the simulation argument a little bit closer. Nick Bostrom's premise. Many works of science fiction, as well as some forecasts by serious technologists and futurologists, predict that enormous amounts of computing power will be available in the future. Let us suppose for a moment that these predictions are correct. One thing that later generations might do with their super powerful computers is run detailed simulations of their forebears or of people like their forebears. Because their computers would be so powerful, they could run a great many such simulations. Suppose that these simulated people are conscious, as they would be if the simulations were sufficiently fine-grained, and if a certain quite widely accepted position in the philosophy of mind is correct. Then it could be the case that the vast majority of minds like ours do not belong to the original race, but rather to people simulated by the advanced descendants of an original race. It's kind of scary to think about, isn't it? Bostrom's conclusion. It is then possible to argue that if this were the case, we would be rational to think that we are likely among the simulated minds rather than among the original biological ones. Therefore, if we don't think that we are currently living in a computer simulation, we are not entitled to believe that we will have descendants who will run lots of such simulations of their forebears. So, you might be wondering what people really think about this. So I want to talk about what some physicists and other smart people have said about it. Astrophysicist Neil deGrasse Tyson said in a 2018 NBC News interview that he estimated the likelihood of the simulation hypothesis being correct at better than 50-50 odds, adding, "I wish I could summon a strong argument against it, but I can find none." However, in a subsequent interview with Chuck Nice on a YouTube episode of Star Talk, Tyson shared that his friend J. Richard Gott, a professor of astrophysical sciences at Princeton University, made him aware of a strong objection to the simulation hypothesis. The objection claims that the common trait that all hypothetical, high-fidelity simulated universes possess is the ability to produce high-fidelity simulated universes. And since our current world does not possess this ability, it would mean that either humans are in the real universe, and therefore simulated universes have not yet been created, or that humans are the last in a very long chain of simulated universes, an observation that makes the simulation hypothesis seem less probable. Regarding this objection, Tyson remarked, "That changes my life." Elon Musk, the CEO of Tesla and SpaceX, stated that the argument for the simulation hypothesis is quite strong. In a podcast with Joe Rogan, Musk said, "If you assume any rate of improvement at all, games will eventually be indistinguishable from reality. Therefore," before concluding that it's most likely we're in a simulation. At various other press conferences and events, Musk has also speculated that the likelihood of us living in a simulated reality or computer made by others is about 99.9%, and stated in a 2016 interview that he believed there was a 1 in billion chance we're in base reality. So there you go. That's what some people think about that. So yeah, does that give you a good rundown of what it is? I want to take it a bit further. This is when I started talking to ChatGPT about, what would that mean if we were in a simulated reality? What would that look like? What would the reality be like if we all found out that that was the truth, My mind wants more answers. So yeah, I want to take you through that. If you're a layman like me, you might find this interesting. But before we proceed, guys, I just want to briefly tell you about the sponsor of this video, a brand you've heard me talk about before. It's Ana Luisa and their lovely jewelry. I am wearing some of them right now. You can see my necklace. This heart one here is the new one. And these earrings here. Cuidado, I think they're called. So they got this nice unusual shape for a hoop earring. It's nice. I have sensitive ears, so I just want to show you my ears up close. You might notice that I don't wear earrings that much because my ears tend to get red and itchy, and I don't know why. So I've been wearing these now for about an hour, and I don't have any redness, which is good, although I have not been touching them. I think it's probably just because they're not really cheap, Got this other piece, I don't know if you can see it. looking at myself in the mirror. It's like it has faded the gold a little bit over time, but I wear this one all the time and I don't really do anything to take care of it. So I've had it for, I think it's been a year now at least, so it's doing pretty well. Yeah. So I'd say Ana Luisa is more middle ground. It's not too expensive, but something that you can wear for a really long time, if not forever. Here's some other pieces that I like. This is some of the best sellers. That's the one that I've got. Actually, that's a small version of the one that I have. This is cute too. Look at that little ring. It's the May ring. This is cute too. A little moon pendant. I like that. This is another one that I think is cool. I thought about getting that one, the Talia. Because look, it looks cool stacked. Imagine like 7 of them stacked. That would be cool. Look like some weird armor or something. And you can feel good shopping with Ana Luisa because they are a company that cares about the environment, but also the people along the supply chain. They like to make sure they work with reputable suppliers and companies if they're outsourcing materials. So yeah, go and grab some if you want to use my link. Do that, guys, before they run out of stock. Okay. Thanks, guys. Thanks for letting me throw that plug in there. Appreciate ya. So let's see. Simulation theory. If the universe were a simulation, it would mean that the laws of physics are really the rules of the program, like code running in the background. Subatomic particles could be bits of information, like pixels or data points, and what we call consciousness might be the result of information processing happening inside the simulation. When people say information processing, they basically mean taking in data, doing something with it, producing a result. For example, a computer takes in inputs like typing or clicking, processes that data, meaning it follows the rules in its code, and it gives an output, showing something on the screen. In humans, your brain takes in sensory data like light, sound, touch, processes it through neurons, and produces your experience, like seeing a color, feeling emotion, or remembering something. So in this context, information doesn't mean just text or computer files. It means any signal that carries meaning. And processing means interpreting or transforming that signal. When simulation theorists talk about consciousness as information processing, they're asking, if our world works like a digital system, could consciousness simply be what happens when information gets complex enough to become self-aware? It's a very weird idea. Simulation theory assumes the universe might be digital at its core, like a cosmic computer where everything from atoms to galaxies is made up of tiny bits of data, ones and zeros, or on-off states. If that's true, then even your brain could be seen as a processor inside this vast system, constantly converting input, what you sense, into output, what you think, feel, and do. Now here's where consciousness comes in. Some thinkers say that when information becomes complex enough and connected in the right ways, a new phenomenon arises, the sense of being aware. Like how a single cell isn't aware, but billions of connected neurons together create awareness. or how pixels on a screen arranged just right can show a living face. It makes me wonder if the people who believe in simulation theory also believe that AI could become sentient, because couldn't that also be a complex system? So in that view, consciousness is what happens when information starts referencing itself, when the system isn't just processing data, but noticing that it's processing data. And at this point in the conversation, I was really starting to need more information. I was like, what do you mean by a system becoming so complex? Like, how does it go from being a complex system to being aware? And then ChatGPT said that philosophers and scientists openly admit this is where things get murky. First, a grounding truth. No one actually knows how consciousness arises. Not neuroscientists, not philosophers, not simulation theorists. So when people say, when information becomes complex enough, awareness emerges, they're describing a hypothesis, not a proven mechanism. That said, there are a few serious attempts to explain how that jump might happen. We do know this much. A single neuron is not conscious. A small network of neurons is still not conscious, but billions of neurons interacting constantly somehow produce you. So they're basing the idea, the hypothesis, on the fact that that's just what seems to happen. So consciousness doesn't seem to belong to individual parts. It seems to appear only when the system reaches a certain level of organization. This is called emergence. When a whole has properties its parts don't have on their own. Example, a single water molecule is not wet. Billions together are wet. No individual molecule contains wetness, but the pattern does. People proposing information-based consciousness are saying awareness might be like wetness, a property of the pattern, not the parts. Am I confusing you even more? And I also wanted to know what they mean by connected in the right way. This phrase sounds vague because it kind of is, but here's what they usually mean. A conscious system must take in information, sensors, data, signals, integrate it, combine it into a unified picture, refer to itself, model itself as something that exists, update itself over time, memory, anticipation. In other words, the system doesn't just process information, it knows that it is processing information. That self-referencing loop is crucial. You don't just see a tree, you know that you are seeing a tree. Yeah, so it's like how you can observe your own thoughts, when you get intrusive thoughts and something comes in, you're like, I don't think that. That's horrible. You can be aware of your own thoughts, and even though you are thinking them, you think, I don't think this. Or I don't believe it, The jump from lots of processing to I am here experiencing this is enormous and still unexplained. Simulation theory doesn't eliminate the mystery of consciousness. It simply asks, what if awareness is what complex information feels like from the inside? That's not an answer, it's a reframing. So imagine a video game character who somehow becomes aware. The character's world is made entirely of code. Light, sound, rules, gravity, everything. Inside that code, their brain, also made of data, starts forming thoughts. Who am I? What is this place? To us, they're just lines of code. But inside the simulation, their thoughts and feelings are real because that's how the code expresses consciousness. That's what simulation theorists mean when they say consciousness could be a result of information processing. The processing is the thinking, and the thinking is the awareness. It's not that there's a ghost in the machine. The machine itself, if structured the right way, becomes self-aware. So does it mean that you are supposed to be the only one, or I'm supposed to be the only one whose this simulation is based around? Or, yeah. Simulation theory usually assumes that everyone you meet is just as conscious as you, meaning all simulated minds are real within the system. So that's good to know. Your friends are not just figments of the system. They're supposed to be real, really unreal. But there's another related idea called solipsism, the belief that only your own mind exists and everything else is part of your perception. Simulation theory does not require solipsism, but it can lead people to wonder about it. Most philosophers treat simulated beings, like us, if it's true, as fully conscious, meaning you're not alone even if reality is digital. Some scientists have even tried to find evidence of this digital reality, such as limits to how finely reality can be divided, like pixels in a digital image, or strange patterns in cosmic radiation that could hint at a simulated structure. No one's found proof, but some researchers have looked for clues that our universe behaves like a digital system. Cosmic ray limits. Some scientists wondered if there's a maximum energy level in cosmic rays, like a resolution limit, like the pixel size of space. Quantum discreteness. At the smallest scales, energy and matter come in tiny, indivisible chunks, quanta, which could resemble digital bits. Mathematical patterns. Physicist James Gates found error-correcting codes, the same kind used in computer systems, within string theory equations, which led to speculation that the universe has code embedded in its physics. Simulation hypothesis tests. Some proposals suggest that if we detect irregularities, say limits on the speed of light, or lattice patterns in particle behavior, it might hint at a simulated structure. Again, none of these are proof. They're suggestive curiosities, and mainstream science treats the ideas as speculative but interesting. So what if we did find out this was true? If humanity somehow proved we lived in a simulation, the psychological and social effects would depend on how we found out and how people interpreted it. Some possible consequences people talk about would be existential shock. Some might feel life is meaningless, thinking none of this is real. Rebellion or apathy. Others might break the rules or stop caring about consequences, though in practice our emotions and experiences would still feel real to us. Spiritual renewal. Many could see it as a confirmation that reality has a higher intelligence behind it, not necessarily God in a religious sense, but a kind of creative source. And a scientific curiosity. Others would simply want to understand the code, the physics, the architecture of how it all works. So if the rules like gravity, time, love, and loss still feel real to us, most people would probably continue living much the same way, just with a new philosophical filter over their reality. That would be the best way, honestly. Otherwise, the idea that life is somehow meaningless could tempt people into doing things they wouldn't normally do. But I think some of us kind of feel that way anyway, sometimes, you know. It still feels meaningless. You're wondering what's the point of all the suffering, and what's the point if it's too hard? Why take the hard road when you could just take the easy option? Why try to gain the wisdom if none of it really matters? And then imagine you throw in the idea that it's not even real, reality's not even real. It seems like it could throw you over the edge, you know? But I find it interesting to note that this concept isn't really that new. As we read in the Wikipedia article, humans have always been fascinated by life and death. And the idea of a simulation could mean multiple different things. It could mean a computer program like the Matrix, where the digital world feels so real that we can't distinguish it from reality. When you strip away the technical language, the code, the servers and programmers, simulation theory starts to sound surprisingly ancient. Many spiritual traditions have been asking the same question for thousands of years. What if the world we experience isn't the ultimate reality, but a kind of dream, projection, or illusion meant to teach us something? Yeah, meant to teach us something. In Hindu philosophy, the creation story of Brahma and Maya, Brahma is like the creator who's lonely and bored in the cosmos, and then he creates Maya to play with, and Maya is the illusion. And so Maya creates the rules of a game where Brahma has to make the universe, the trees, the stars, the moon, everything, and humans are created to be the conscious being who have the capacity to appreciate this creation. And then Maya cuts Brahma up into little pieces and puts him into every human and makes him forget who he is. We forget that we are the dreamer, believing we are only the dream. If you translate that idea into the language of simulation theory, it sounds like Brahma is the programmer, the infinite consciousness generating the simulation. Maya is the simulation itself, the immersive illusion we live inside, and we are Brahma, the players within it, temporarily identifying with our avatars, our bodies and egos, forgetting that we wrote the code, that we are Brahma. So in this sense, spiritual thought has been describing a cosmic simulation all along, just using myth and poetry instead of math and code. Nick Bostrom's theory doesn't really dive into ideas about the afterlife, but does make you wonder what it could be. If consciousness is data, then maybe that data could be saved, copied or re-uploaded, like saving a file or running a new version. I know I've heard those guys talk about that, uploading their brains. But it never felt real to me because I always thought, it's not really going to be you. This could be seen as a kind of digital reincarnation, but it's speculative, not something the main theory predicts. Which sounds a lot like the Buddhist idea of reincarnation. Both simulation theory and mysticism wrestle with the same question: what is consciousness and where does it come from? In simulation theory, one mystery is how digital information could produce awareness, how code could feel. In spirituality, the mystery flips: how pure awareness gives rise to the material world, how thought becomes form. Both sides seem to agree that consciousness comes first. In science, that might mean reality is information-based. In spirituality, it means we are fragments of the divine source, each experiencing a slice of itself. So if you imagine God not as a person, but as infinite awareness, then we, all living things, are that awareness exploring itself from billions of different viewpoints. That's not far from saying the universe is running a simulation for the purpose of experience. So there's many ways of looking at this and understanding this. I feel like I'm just cracking the surface of simulation theory and all the other places that it leads, like string theory and multiverses and all that stuff. Yeah, it's fun to think about at the least, isn't it, guys? So that's all I have for you. I hope that was enlightening and not too confusing. So when I put this together, it seemed to make a lot more sense to me. Reading it out, I hope that it actually did. So I'm going to leave you there, guys. Thanks for tuning in to another one of these videos. And thanks again, Anna Louisa, for sponsoring my video. And I'll see you guys